Okay boys, we are here to change the upper, not the lower, the upper ball joints on a 2008 Ford Ranger. Now, as you can see, this is not a professional shop. This is a man with a kid, a garage full of crap, his vehicle's outside, it's gonna rain in about 8 hours, says the weather forecast. It's the windiest day that it's been all year, so every single thing, your gloves, anything you put down blows away. Ideal conditions for the do-it-yourselfer. Now, as you may have figured out from my intro, we're changing ball joints. We have an issue. The upper ball joints here are junk. And if you go on forums, everybody says they're junk and they have to be replaced all the time. Now, the problem is there's a few different uppers for Ford Rangers. If you have one that does not look like this, where it's got the A-arm just kind of tucked right in right there, just like that, and you got something different, then this video may or may not work. I cannot guarantee anything. But if you have one that looks like this, I can show you what's going on. Now here's the deal. In any one of these do-it-yourself videos, the first thing they do is they say, oh, jack the truck up and remove the tire. Well, I gotta tell you, this is a little bit more of an advanced ball joint job, and if you can't jack your truck up and remove the tire, don't do this job. Now, let's get into why we're doing it here. This boot's clearly failed. There's grease all over the place. These ball joints are only 2 years old, which is very disappointing. They have a lifetime warranty, but because I bought it, they'll sell them as a complete assembly. Okay, so you buy it and the ball joint's already pressed in there. Now that's nice, but changing these out really sucks. Okay, there's not a lot of room to get big heavy-duty wrenches in there. It has to be preloaded, so you've got to tighten it, put torsion on it with a jack, and then tighten it some more. It's just not a fun job. So I'd rather change the ball joint, and that's it, right? So I got 2 new ball joints under warranty, and I'm going to show you how to swap them out. Now the reason I'm showing you is because there's no other videos on YouTube showing upper ball joints. So don't expect me to be top quality. I'm the only one you got. Beggars can't be choosers. But going through this, it's not a terribly difficult job. The biggest problem is you're not going to be able to find the right tools. Now we're going to get into that. But basically, I'm going to show you all the tools, and I'm actually going to put that at the end of the video because you're going to probably have to watch this multiple times, and you don't want to watch me go through the tools every single time. So at the end of the video, that's where all the tools are going to be. Just watch through once anyway, so you know what you're getting into, and then you can see what tools you need. So with that, let's get into it. Okay, so to save you time, I'm doing this all in fast speed. First thing I'm doing is taking off these back 2 bolts. They're both 15 millimeters. They can be fairly high torque, so I did use a fairly long extension there, and then I just took them out with a ratchet action. So there's the 2 of those there. At the end of the video, you'll be able to see the torque specs and whatnot with that. Use some Loctite throwing them back in. Now we're going to take this dust cover off. There's 3 8mm bolts on the front, and then on the back here where I'm showing, that's where the ABS line connects, and you are going to need to move that out of the way. So just going to rip those off really quick. Once those are ripped off, then we'll get into the next step. Okay, so I just popped these 2 clips out. We just wanted to get this out of the way, so those are easy. You just use a flat blade screwdriver. And now that we've got the brake caliper off and that out of the way, we're basically ready to go here. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to clean this ball joint up. I'm going to grab a 17mm and a 15mm. We're going to take this bolt out, and then we're going to get a hammer. And we're just going to separate that, and then we'll go from there. So this can be a little bit tight to get out. Just use a punch or something to pound it out. It is under a bit of load typically, so get her out with a hammer and you should be good to go. Okay guys, we got her separated super easy there. 1 hit with the hammer and it came apart. That's because I just installed this 2 years ago when I swapped the whole A-arm out. Now for you, it's likely going to be much harder, okay? I ended up, I think, having to use a pickle fork and getting on there and smashing it out. Honestly, I don't think you need to do that. Pickle forks kind of suck, and obviously if you're separating it for some other reason, you can't reuse the boot or the ball joint, and you can't buy boots anymore that I can find for these upper ball joints. It's just a full assembly, which really sucks because all that's wrong with these is the boots. But anyway, basically all you got to do is separate that. Just hit it upwards with the hammer, right? Because this thing down here, the whole suspension is holding it down. So if you just hit up on this with a hammer, it should come apart. If not, sometimes they really get stuck in there. Spray some penetrant in there, get a air hammer and just, or regular hammer, and do some hitting, like some pounding on this. Now it says in the manual not to do that because you can get stress cracking and your whole thing can fall apart. So this is me telling you not to do that, but if you want it to come apart, that's kind of what you're gonna have to do. So it can be very challenging. There's other YouTube videos, not on Rangers, but on other vehicles, how to get them apart. I'm not gonna say any more than that, just look it up. But what we're gonna do now is show you the hard part, which is pressing the ball joints out with not the right things. Alright guys, so we got the hub pulled out of the way here, and what the issue is, I've got the standard ball joint set up here. This is actually, I'll just show you, this is actually a full high-end kit. I actually bought the Princess Auto, which I'm in Canada, but that's the same thing as Harbor Freight kit as well, and they're literally identical. They have all the same parts. The only difference I've noticed is these seem to be much higher quality casts, or I don't know if they're maybe even machine finished, whereas these are kind of not as clean a finish and probably shitty China steel. But all the good steel is Chinese now too, so who knows. But anyway, you know, that's probably $100, that's probably $300, comes with all the same parts in case you're thinking of getting a ball joint kit. If you have a Ford Ranger, they'll work just fine on the lowers, but as you're about to see, does not work on the uppers. So essentially the problem is none of these pieces fit. So this is where it gets more involved. This is not a standard job, you got to get a little creative. So I'll show you what the issues are here. Next thing we're going to do is just to keep things a little bit more clean, I'm just going to wipe all that grease out of there. Okay, so as you can see, they were properly greased. There was nothing wrong here. This is my video evidence. It's just the boot failed. I don't know if it's too thin or what their deal is. I mean, it comes pre-installed. There's really nothing I could have done wrong. Just junk boots, they're too thin. So yeah, they're torn right in. Anyway, this is basically too long for anything to fit. Okay, it's sticking through the bottom. And also the actual size of the ball joint, width-wise, nothing will fit on it. So like this goes over it, which you don't want. You need something to press it out, right? Sorry about that. And in case you didn't realize, the ball joint's actually going to press out upwards. Okay, so that's essentially the issue, is nothing will fit on there. Now if you have a different ball joint cut than me and something fits right on those lips and you can push it out, good for you. But nothing did work. You need to be something that's less than 1.83 inches, I think, is the outer OD of this piece. So it just so happens that a 34 millimeter is very close. So as you can see, basically this gets stuck here and won't work. So we got two different problems. So the first problem we're going to solve is by taking an angle grinder. We're going to cut this bottom of the ball joint off. So that's where I say it gets a little bit more involved. It's not hard to do if you know how to do it, but I mean, if you're a guy who doesn't have an angle grinder, I guess that's an issue for you. So you're gonna have to go out and find something that can press that ball joint out. In my case, 34 millimeter socket, which is nice because I didn't have one of these, so now I got one for who knows what. So one more thing you got to do is you got to remove this little circlip that's in here. It's actually on the, if you have the pre-installed ones like I do, it's on the back side, so I just rotate it around so I could access to it. I'll spread it or take it apart, then I'm going to cut the ball joint off, and then I'm going to start pressing it out, basically setting this up. So we'll be putting, I think it's this guy. Yeah, so see that fits, sorry, that fits nice and snug on the outside, so the ball joint can press up inside there. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and we'll show you that in just a minute. So this is honestly the worst part of the job. This is what makes it harder than a standard upper ball joint swap. It's basically like they just didn't design this to come apart. You're supposed to replace the entire upper A-arm. Just because I found preloading it and everything so much work, I actually found this to be easier. For me, a shop probably wouldn't, but it also saves money. I mean, the ball joint, I think was only like 20 bucks or 30 bucks, whereas like the whole upper was like 80 or 100 and some, depending on which brand you buy. My other comment is I bought the M brand, Movatech brand, and I would not recommend that. I would go with the Moogs. Just get the top of the line, it's worth it. Okay guys, so as you see, that work takes a little bit of elbow grease, but wasn't really a problem at all. Yeah, my only comment is, you'll see I didn't have a lot of room on the bottom, so I ended up having to use a box wrench, and it was pretty painful, honestly. It took some time, but for the amount of money you save doing it yourself, it's totally worth it. But just keep in mind, it's really tight against that lower A-arm. So here's your ball joint. It's got the cutout stub there to get it out. And yeah, they definitely were a little loose too, I should say that. Like, even though they hadn't been, the boot hadn't been ripped that long, like you could move it pretty easily by hand. So they weren't totally gone, but they were definitely going quick. So anyway, one thing to point out is they do have a direction that they actuate in. So make sure that you line it up properly. You want it perpendicular to the frame there, right? So don't put them in like this or you won't get any, you'll have problems, okay? So when we're putting the ball joint back in now, what you're supposed to do is be able to put the bottom of the ball joint through this hole here, the stub, and then you basically just press it down. Problem in this truck is all the ball joint tools are too long and you hit the top of the fender. So that basically means we have to once again do something that it's not really designed to do and use it upside down. And so I found a couple of sort of goofy ways to make that work. What that involves is I found this plate. Now you can figure something else out, okay? There's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say, but I just basically grabbed this plate and I grabbed this deep socket that's about the right depth. I'll show you it on the ball joint in a second. And this cap will basically go on the top, and that's what's going to let us press it down. So again, it's not ideal. We're not using quite the standard pieces, but we can make it work. And I got my grease gun there, just a reminder. I'm not going to talk about it again, but you do have to grease the ball joint when you put it in. And it's a good time to grease your bottom when you've got access to it like this. Can't believe how rusty this country is, my goodness. Welcome to Canada. Anyway, all right, on to the next step. Okay, so here we are with our ball joint. One thing I'm a little bit annoyed about is they don't seem to carry these in stock very well because not very many people use them, I guess. They only had one in stock, and then they brought another one in. It has a different shaped boot. And that's such a minor thing, but it just kind of ticks me off because it's a different shape. But it'll be a cool test to see which one lasts longer. So, yeah, we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, we're basically just going to do the same thing here like I talked about. You do have to take the boot off first, so I'll just go ahead and do that right now. Try and keep that all clean. It's got a little bit of grease in there, hey? But anyway, yeah, so we're going to line it up proper here. Just like this. From there, we press it in like we talked about. So I'll put her back on the time lapse there, and we'll see how she goes. So while I'm doing this, it's kind of like you start to realize that they never intended for you to do this. I am just way too cheap, and I made it work. So for anyone else who's cheap, as I said, don't do this. Pay someone else to do it. Buy the more expensive parts. But yeah, this is how I did it. And I'm not giving mechanical advice. Trying to think if there were any other issues while I was doing this. Again, it's just super tight with that threaded rod at the bottom. Like, you have almost no room where that A-arm is. Once it starts to press a little bit, it gets a lot easier, but you can never get a ratchet on it, basically. Like, you're just turning it a quarter turn at a time. So, not the most fun, but it does work. Okay, guys, one comment there you might have saw. Make sure you wipe off. I use some brake clean there. Just get rid of all the grease and rocks. You don't want rocks getting pushed and dust down in there. It's going to make it super hard for the next guy to remove. And wreck tolerances, yeah, just don't do it. Anyway, this is my setup. So I got that top cap on there, this bottom plate. We pushed it all in, so now I'm just loosening it off. And you'll see, you can just sort of, well, hard to do with one hand, but I'll see if we can make this happen here. Yeah, there we go, got her out of the way. Okay guys, so that's it. Our ball joint's in there. Now we're going to do the boot install and grease her up and put her all back together. So let's get to it. Check out that sunset. I'll show you a better shot in a bit. Anyway, back to the ball joints. Remember I said you got to line this thing up perpendicular. So that's kind of what I'm talking about there. You want the slot so it can fully actuate this way and not back and forth. And by the way, that is a brand new ball joint. It was stiff and hard to move, but you can move them. And yeah, so we got her in. Let's move to the next step here. Alright, so I figure it was a good time to put this little doohickey in here. This is probably a 1/4 inch fitting. And I'm just using a little monkey wrench here. One thing to note with these, this is just like a little brass cap top situation, and you don't want to over tighten this thing. I have seen guys do that where they just crank down on this thing and it like cracks the top and rips a hole, and then you're getting a bunch of grit in there. Good job, Kyle, dropping the wrench. Anyway, so basically just tighten it till it's flush and give it a little snug. Don't overdo this thing. That's my advice there. And if you can get like a little cap to go on top of this, that really helps. It's gonna get dirty, so just helps keep the dust out of there. And we're gonna grease this quick here. I got my grease gun. You're gonna need a grease gun. I'm gonna grease the bottom one while I'm at it, and we'll just grease that up. And then, well, we're gonna do that after we put the boot on. Okay, just a little trick for you. I was having a hard time getting this to seat in because this particular boot is round, and it just wouldn't, it was acting like a spring and it just wouldn't let it sit in there. So what I was able to do is actually just tuck it up inside on itself. So you can kind of see I like roll it up, and I'll fix that, pull that back out after. And the grease will actually push it out as well, but that just lets me get it into place. You might have the boot that I had on the other side, so I actually have two different boots even though it's the same part number. But one is like almost like a spring kind of style. It's like a jagged edge style. I'll try and find a pic of it. But that is the same style that was in here previously, and they both failed within 2 years. So hopefully this boot performs better. And if it does, I will leave a link in the description. Hopefully I'll remember to put it there. Or maybe I'll cue it up to this video, but I will let you know if these fail again and if this one works out better. These are Movtech A-arms. Just get the Moogs, because the Movtechs just piss me off for failing. So I'd recommend a Moog for sure. Moog's supposed to be better. Some people say they're starting to be made of Chinesium. That could be true, but it can't be any worse than these ones. I think I saved 30 bucks. And it definitely wasn't worth it. Granted, they said they had lifetime warranty, so I thought it was gonna be worth it. I was like, save 30 bucks and still get lifetime warranty, great deal. No, pay the extra money. Anyway, back to the story. Okay guys, I hope my arm wasn't in the way there, but this particular ball joint was a lot harder to put in than the other side. It was quite tight on the taper. At any rate, basically I pushed that boot up. Now that's probably not honestly ideally how you want it, but the grease will work itself out, whatever, it's in there. Essentially, this upper A-arm here, there we go. Upper A-arm here is actually sprung if it's installed properly. So if you change this, you actually need to like preload the suspension when you're tightening the bolts. So it acts like a spring, and then you're also fighting the boot and everything. So it's kind of hard. So what I ended up doing is putting a jack underneath that. I did that on the other side too, and I just forgot. Don't mind the frickin' diesel guy there. Yeah, so I put the, so I threw the jack underneath there, and I just basically slowly jacked it, and then I hammered it at the same time, put the screw right in there, and you can make any jokes you want about what I just said. So now we're gonna throw the nut on, we're gonna torque that, and we're gonna throw the rest of the bits and bobs back on there, and we'll go through her. All right, let's go through some torque specs, starting with this bolt here. That's a 17 millimeter, and that side is a 15 millimeter, 46 foot-pounds. Okay, so we got, we're just gonna throw our dust shield back on there. We got 3 bolts that are short to throw the dust cover back on, and then right on the back of here, we got a longer bolt for our ABS line. Are all 8 foot-pounds. I mean, just do them hand tight, but if somebody wanted to be that technical, 8 foot-pounds. And we're gonna throw those bolts on. Those are 115 foot-pounds each with some Loctite. And I can't remember the size, I'll tell you when I get to it. I think they're 15 millimeters, but I'll confirm on the next clip. Alright, so that pretty much wraps her up. That's all your torque specs there. I did include 2 service manual pictures of the breaker parts with all the specs at the end of this video, so that should be everything you need to get the job done. Appreciate you guys watching, and give me a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed. So that's what she should look like. Still got to grease it, but I hope that helps you all out. You can in fact replace the upper ball joints of a Ford Ranger. Alright boys, just did our ball joints. Time to see if the engine still starts. Alright, well the engine still starts, so we must have done something right. Hope the video helped you, and good luck out there.